founder of the London software craftsman community. Sandro has been coding since a very young age, but only started his professional career in 1996. He has worked for startups, software houses, product companies, international consultancy companies, and investment banks. During his career, Sandro has the opportunity to work in a good variety of projects with different languages, technologies across many different industries. Let's please welcome Mr. Sandro Mancuso on stage.
Hello, 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 hello. So this morning Uncle Bob was talking about discipline. If we go back to the if we go back to 1968, some people were talking about a software crisis. And most of it was because of the size of the projects that they were building and the cost of those projects. And back then, our profession didn't exist. People building software, they were not computer scientists because computer science didn't exist. So there was a need to structure the way that we build software. And this structure, they try to find a metaphor or something closer in order to control that. And that was the first time that we used the word software engineering, because we were trying to bring the engineering disciplines to our industry. So apparently renaming our profession or calling software engineering didn't really help with our discipline, because we're still talking about that today. But the software craftsmanship comes with a lot of disciplines as well. It's more like a mindset than technical practices, but we advocate quite a few disciplines and practices. But I cannot talk about craftsmanship before talking about Agile. It's nice to be outside. So, I believe that most of you have seen that, right? This is an Agile conference. Is there anyone that haven't seen the manifesto here? All right. So I don't know how much of you know about the history, but like in that was 2001. Is Uncle Bob here around? So because he might. Oh, there you go. So he might shout at me and correct me if I say something stupid. But like in 2001. Uncle Bob and 16 other people got together to figure out ways, or there were a lot of interesting people doing things, well, coming up with methodologies or techniques that would make us build software better. So they got together and said, well, let's see if we can share with each other what we are doing. And then in that conversation, they have different, so for example, they have like Ken Schwaber, Jeff Sutherland from Scrum, and then Dave Thomas, Andy Hunt from Pragmatic Programmers, Kent Beck, Ward Cunningham, Ron Jeffries from Extreme Programming, so Martin Fowler. There's quite a lot of interesting people in there. But those people didn't represent a single thing. They had their own, so they were representing disciplines like Crystal, DSDM, feature-driven development. There were loads, so Agile is not a thing. So when they came up with the Agile term, it was more an umbrella of disciplines and mostly values, I think. And that's when, right after that, the Agile Alliance was formed. And then conferences started all over the world very quickly. In a matter of like 2-3 years, like Agile was all over the place with conference and stuff. And that's exactly when I moved to London. That was in 2004. So what happened was the world of Agile took the world by storm. So companies said, wow, I don't know exactly what this thing is, but I want that, right? So we can do things faster, and then this, what we call the Agile transformation era began. I remember that as soon as I arrived in London in early 2000s, that was our job. I worked for a consultancy company where we would go to companies to transform them, right? So they wanted to transform themselves into something that they didn't really understand what it was, but they probably were not happy with what they had. So they said, well, maybe if we do things differently, it would solve our problem. And then I remember it was fascinating for me to see because everything changed. All of a sudden we had stand-ups and burn-down charts and backlogs of requirement documents became user stories somehow, and then project managers became agile coaches, and iterations and all this kind of good stuff, and of course post-its, right? Because like back then, a true sign of agility is the number of post-its in the wall. The more post-its you have, the more agile you are, right? I think that the company that benefited the most of agile was 3M. I don't think they ever sold so many post-its in their history, and they had no clue why. All of a sudden, people all over the world were buying post-its, right? So it was amazing stuff, right? So. And then Scrum became mainstream as well, which helped because the people that could actually afford and bring those transformations to companies, they were not developers. They were people in senior positions in those companies, and normally they are closer to management and business than the developers. So they were paying or investing on those transformations, and that's why there is a natural tendency for you to lean towards the things that you know. And in this spectrum of methodologies that are under the Agile umbrella, you have in one extreme, you have Scrum. There is a product development methodology. There is not a software methodology. There is, if you read the Scrum guide, even today, the word software doesn't appear anywhere in the 16 pages. And then on the other spectrum, you have extreme programming. There is a more technical methodology. But that's why, that's my guess at least, why the process side became more popular, because the people investing on those things, they were process people. So, and then we spent 10 years, or over 10 years, focusing on people, process, and interactions, and team buildings, and all problems that had to be solved. So reducing waste and bureaucracy, all this kind of good stuff, bringing lean principles to the mix, and it was awesome. So they were, don't get me wrong, they were problems that had to be solved. Those problems directly impact the software that we produce. The problem is, without those things, we cannot produce quality software. But because of the focus that those things had, we started forgetting the original ideas of Agile. Sometimes I feel that is, you know, Chinese whisper, that one person goes and speaks in the ear of the other person, and so on, and then at the end has a completely different meaning. For me, that's what Agile is today. It's completely different from what it was in the past, right? So I think that, unfortunately, adopting processes became the goal, but they forgot about what you were trying to achieve while adopting those things. So, and then it happened, right? So I call it the Agile hangover. Places like London that we were very early adopters of those ideas. So after a few years that companies tried to apply those ideas and methodologies, all of a sudden they woke up and say, look, I don't think that we are producing software better than we were before. Yeah, we talk to each other now, there's a collaboration is better, but we still have the same old problems. We still have long cycles to production, we still have bugs, we still have technical debt, and so the only difference is that we can see the pile of shit growing every 2 weeks, right? So at least then we are better, at least we see that. So that's all right. And they also talk about Toyota, like as an example, right? Let's forget about all the recalls that they have and all the problems, but like, they said, oh, they rejuggled their entire production line and they pull the cord and stop everything. Sure, but they also changed their machines. They also changed the way that they work. So you cannot just rearrange your production line and use exactly the old machines and the old people working the same way. And that's what we were trying to do with software. We were trying to rearrange how people work, but we didn't change how we build software. So, and it doesn't matter what other people say, right? So if the business decided that they're going to solve one of their problems building software, in a software project, the most important deliverable is the software itself. Everything else is a means to an end. So, but it's not only about the process side of Agile that didn't go so well. We developers didn't do our part either. So, in a reasonably healthy Agile environment, normally developers have a saying. They say, like, you know what, like, I think the team decided it's going to take 2 weeks. Or so we kind of collaborate with the business to decide deadlines. As long as you are, again, reasonably mature Agile environment. But even then, we still screw up. Like a lot of the pressure that we say that is the business, quite often we put the pressure on ourselves. And we have the wrong notion of time. Like, I was working in this Agile project in an enterprise, and I remember when I joined, there was this guy, and I said, okay, so can I pair with you? I was new to the team. And then he said, yeah, sure. He didn't like very much the idea of me getting close to him, but he said, well, you know, I'm a bit busy, but yeah, whatever. So, and then I was just looking at the beginning, and then he was there, debugging stuff. And then he would say, then he would package the application because he could not run locally, so he would copy it across to another server, bring the whole thing down, bring the application up, post a message to a trading platform, and so push a message into the queue, and then follow the logs, look at the logs. And so, no. He would go back, and then change something, put more logs, log, 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 log. You know that's kind of very useful logs, like, it started method 1. Ended method 1. So he started this kind of thing, so trying to debug through logs his code. And then he would go on and at some point I said, like, can we write some tests maybe, try to replicate, so, no, it will take too long. And then he was doing that, I swear, like, at least for 2 hours. Right, so put in the logs, package, copy it across, bring the environment down, deploy the thing, bring it up, push a XML message into a queue, wait for the system to reply, look at the logs, go back. And I said, like, but can we run locally at least? No, it doesn't run locally. Can we run some tests? No, it doesn't have, we don't have. And everything because he thought that he didn't have time. And then when he finally found the problem, it was, of course, a long method, and then he went there, looked at the landscape of the thing. Okay, I think that is after these 2 blocks of comments in here, put a big if statement. And yeah, because, you know, you laugh, but we see these big methods. For me, it's amazing to see that people can manage those. Right? So they work with these long methods, and the way that they do it, they memorize the landscape. You know, when you are driving and you see the mountains, the lake, the trees, right? That's the same. You look at the code and you say, okay, there is this bunch of if statements nested into each other, and then there is this big for loop, and then there is a block of comments. Sometimes there's just white lines that they explicitly break in white lines. They don't extract. They say, no, this block is different from this. Let's put like 10 white lines. And then they memorize it. So that's what they know. Oh, we need to change that. Oh yeah, that's in line 437 after the if statement. So wow. So, and all of that because they don't have time. So, but anyway, so apparently other people have time. Is there any QA in the audience? Any tester? Right, 1, 2, a few. Apparently these people have tons of time. They have absolutely nothing better to do with their lives. Right, so say like, hey, take my sheet because I'm too busy, right? So you have nothing to do, right? So that's apparently how this, and that was an Agile team, by the way. So yeah, of course we do Agile in this company. So, but what is it to be Agile anyway? So when you look at all these methodologies, what is fascinating to see, and I think that's why they were able to put them under the same umbrella, because even tackling slightly different problems, they actually at their real core, they are the same. What all of them try to do is to reduce the feedback loop. And then As soon as you reduce the feedback loop, that gives you new information more often. And that ability to get new information and, most importantly, react and adapt to that new information is what gives you the agility. Because the Agile methodologies, they don't solve a problem. They expose problems. That's what they do. You shorten the feedback loop, new information comes up. What you do with that is what may or may not be agility. Right? So the problem that we had after a few years was, I think that this manifesto is awesome. Really. We have one in Craftsmanship, I'm going to talk about it. I don't think that it's that great. But the Agile manifesto, I think it's really cool. It's really like, yeah, we were here, we value that, but we value this more. There was a clear division. The Craftsmanship manifesto doesn't have that. But anyway, so the working software part, I think that was not emphasized enough. I think that because they thought that it was already under the context of software development, there was no need. Maybe Uncle Bob can give more reasons for that, but like, it was forgotten. It was, yeah, well, you know, it will work, right? So that's the problem. And we were a bit, I think that after some time, working software for us was just not enough, because all the legacy code, all the shit that we deal with all the time, it's still working at the end of the day, right? So badly or not, it still works, we still manage it, but we wanted more. But one thing that is difficult to explain is there is this sometimes friction between business and technology. Most companies today, like them or not, they are a technology company. Some of them just don't know about it. They think that they are a supermarket. They think that they are an insurance company. They think that they are, I don't know, clothing. But they are, at their core, still a technology company. They just didn't realize that yet. But it's not difficult to explain to them. Because at the end of the day, companies or business, the business is hostage of their own software. The business leaders, the people with the vision, they can have the best ideas in the world. They may want to say, this idea, we are going to dominate the whole thing. It's not going to happen if you don't produce the software. So we, in the technology side, we dictate the pace of their business. And while they don't understand that, we will have an issue. But we keep hurting ourselves as well. At the beginning of the project, every time that you put a metric, I think that before there was a few mentions to metrics and stuff. So as soon as you start measuring stuff, what is great, I mean, some people hate metrics, some people love them. I'm somewhere in the middle. I love them as information for me to do something, but I don't rely on them for measure certain things. So at the beginning of a project, because you have nothing, you can move quite fast, right? But as you progress, let's assume that people are interested in story points. So let's say that at the beginning, for a few months, we do, I don't know, 8 story points. As our system becomes more complex, we take these new features, and they don't fit anymore. And what we do, we split the story, and we split the story, and we split the story until they are 1, 2, 3 points, and they now have an iteration of 8 points. And then we have this false sense of progress that we are doing 8 story points every iteration, but the actual stuff that we are producing is far less than we were 6 months ago. But all of that goes away, right? So I think that Uncle Bob always said, like, it's funny for me to talk about craftsmanship with him in the audience, but like, he always said, like, the only way to go fast is to go well. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. It doesn't matter really what you are measuring. So I was in this, that's another one for the QA. So, or the testers. I was working for this big telecom company that they were adopting Agile. And so basically what, you know those, every large company, every 6 months, so basically what they're saying, because I know that you don't have, like, basically say like, the manager goes, our goal is to write bug-free software. I will pay a $10 bonus for every bug you find and fix. Everyone goes, hey, we are rich, right? So that's what it says. So you know, these large companies, every 6 months, the big CEOs, CTOs, they come up from the clouds, right, to speak to the commoners, right? So, and then they come with their PowerPoints and stuff and to talk about our profitability, right? So the targets for the next 5 years and all this kind of stuff. And then I remember, I swear, it's not, you need to be in a telecom company for you to understand. So, and then they had a very traditional model. They had loads of development teams, and they had a centralized QA team in the middle, and this QA team is shared with everyone. So all the shit from the entire company would be flooded into that place, right? So then you have the person above the clouds coming out, the CXO or whatever he was, and then say like, now I want a round of applause to our QA team. In the past 6 months, they caught almost 1,000 bugs. And everyone was, wow, ooh, QA. And I said, what sort of nonsense or madness is this? I would have fired half of the company. And they were, no, QA, great work. So, wow, right? And then I was trying to say, like, QA should find nada, zero. They should be on Facebook every single day. Well, in fact, helping us to come up with requirements and stuff, right? But yeah, they should absolutely, the less they do, the better in terms of finding bugs. Every bug that a QA person finds, I will feel, how can I say, that I didn't do my job, right? It was my job to take that piece of business and deliver. Of course, I'm a human being. Of course, I will create bugs. Of course, I will fail. But I cannot just be a constant, because then I'm just pure incompetent, right? So, and again, we had all the ceremonies, all the processes and everything else. So in 2008, so Uncle Bob and a few other people in Chicago said, you know what, we need to put a stop on this madness, right? So they came together and start talking about software craftsmanship. And there was a manifesto that came out of it that is, of course, piggybacking on the Agile one. So basically what it says is we don't want only working software but also well-crafted software. And what it means is this is not software that we are scared to touch. This is not about gold plating. So this is a misunderstanding of craftsmanship. People think that craftsmanship is all about polishing your code, is writing beautiful code. It is not about that. It's basically creating a software that you can maintain, that you are not scared. Everywhere you go, you can touch. This is what is about well-crafted software. And for that, of course, you apply certain techniques. So steadily adding value. There is a big debate about if software is an asset or not. At least there was a while back. There's also a debate about stakeholders, right? So in my view, software is an asset. So if you think about the amount of money that it costs, think about the software that you write, think about the salaries that you have, think about the infrastructure you have in your companies, all the computers, the building, the telecom infrastructure, the servers, the marketing people, everyone. The cost of building a meaningful software today is massive. And then, if we are doing the wrong thing, you can kind of split for example, yeah, it was not only my fault. Maybe the business, ourselves, we didn't talk enough, or didn't analyze the market or whatever. But what happens, at least from the world that I come from, there is a lot of large organizations. I don't know if you went through these things, but at some point they say, okay, so now we have a new 5-year plan. Right? So they have a vision, a technical vision, so it comes from the architects or the CTO group or whatever you call in each company. We have a 5-year plan for our technology strategy. 2 years later, this person gets promoted because at least it's in motion, that plan is in motion. And then this person goes somewhere, a new one comes in and say, now we have a new 5-year plan to move forward, right? So, and then, even when we are almost never, but manage to stay doing the same, stay on the same plan for a few years. At some point, someone say, we need to decommission this shit because we cannot maintain this anymore. And then they come up with a plan to rewrite a piece of code and write a brand new one that is as shit as the previous one, and will keep in the cycle. So, and this is our fault. Because if we stop, if there is a reason that someone says we need to rewrite this, replacing software because the business changed their direction is okay, but because of the system is shit, that is our fault. Right? And steadily adding value for me is all about that. Is us never letting our systems to get to that place. So this is one of the areas of the manifesto that I like the most, is the community of professionals. I think that we also talked about this morning about the next generation, always having new people joining our industry, and it's up to us to make sure that we share our knowledge and we mentor those people. So I think that the software craftsmanship communities around the world are doing great. They are helping a lot of people, like Agile communities and like technology communities, but we as an industry, to be fair to all of us, we are doing a good job with our, everywhere you go there are meetups. It doesn't need to be craftsmanship meetups, but there is an Agile one, there is a JavaScript, there is whatever language. I think that we are one of the very few industries that share knowledge at this scale. Right? So I think that we are doing great. So productive partnerships. So this is also very important. So what this says in my mind, the way that I interpret this, is that we are just not employees. The contractual model that you have, if you are a permanent employee, consultant, contract, it doesn't matter. This is just an agreement, that's how you get paid and which benefits you have. But the relationship between you and your employer is what it matters, right? So, we talk about stakeholders. I think that in a productive partnership, I am also a stakeholder, and if it's a partnership, I'm also investing. And I'm building a career. And I don't want to build a career on top of failures. So the stake that I have in the game is trying to make every every project that I'm in a successful project. Because making a failure after failure is not good for me either. So it's not only about me, of course, but this is how we help. They are asking for my service, and I will do everything that I can to make them succeed. So what is craftsmanship anyway? There's not a proper definition. I gave a few, and I find it very difficult to find one. But this is one that I like. Software craftsmanship is all about putting responsibility, professionalism, pragmatism, and pride back into software development. But if I had to choose just one word to define software craftsmanship, that would definitely be professionalism. So there was also, in the early days of craftsmanship, there was a lot of debate. Is craftsmanship replacing Agile? So if we are bringing craftsmanship into the mix, how does it now work with Agile? I think that craftsmanship, let's put it this way. If Agile had been implemented as it was originally decided, and we had the both half of Agile, so the process and the technical part coming together naturally, I'm not sure if you would be talking about craftsmanship today. But that didn't happen. So the current state of Agile, that is more focused on the process side, I think that craftsmanship tries to rebalance that. So I think that Agile, again, the current state, is all about getting the feedback loop from the business in terms of the business direction. Are we doing the right thing? What is more important right now? And the craftsmanship will bring two sides to it. There is the technical side, there is the doing things right, and there is the more ideological side, there is the mindset and professionalism for the people that like the ideas of craftsmanship. So, how many of you have seen, well, you cannot see from where you are probably, but for those that can, how many of you have seen this? Not many hands, less than half. So this is fascinating because extreme programming is the most technical discipline in the Agile umbrella. And the process side of Agile has a lot of techniques, a lot of methodologies for us to bring feedback. Right? So we can do the same on the technical side. And one of the ways, one of the techniques that we, from the software craftsmanship world, we advocate are the extreme programming practices. So we believe that most of these practices, they have a small feedback loop at their core. But focus on the technical side. So what I get quite often is, but you don't know my company. You don't know my manager and my colleagues. This will never gonna work in the place that I work. So context matter. There's no doubt. You cannot just say, hey, let's put this practice in there or this architecture in there and it will work. No, it won't. You need to understand the context that you are in and adapt your tools according to your goals. But does it always matter? Are there places that are building software, doing something meaningful, a proper business, that doesn't care about quality, doesn't care about bugs in production, or doesn't care about testing, doesn't care about velocity and agility, or deploying often? And so I think that those things are common. What we fail as developers, we fail to communicate, because we are doing the same thing that some of the Agile coaches are doing. They are coming and trying to force Scrum or Kanban or whatever. They are forcing the practice, and we do the same. We go there and say the whole team needs to do TDD. The whole team needs to do pair programming. The whole team. Why? Why do we need to do that? And that's the problem, because we go with an opinion, asking people to change the way that they work, to use a different practice, and you don't explain why. So you can take those practices and think about the value that they bring, because that's what it's important. So for example, you can go to your project manager or your team and say, like, wouldn't it be nice if at every time I wanted or we wanted, we could press a button and know if our system is working? How long does it take today for us to know that after a change, our entire system is still working? Because if you can rationalize that, then we can start saying, okay, so what if we shorten that feedback loop? So if today takes 2 weeks, takes a day or whatever, what if we could do that? Get the same thing in 2 minutes, in 10 minutes? Then you are talking about value. You are talking about a short feedback loop. That is important. The goal is important. So, test-driven development. How can we get feedback loop from our code? Right? So as we drive, how can we make sure that we are driving it safely? And everything that we are doing is always working, always integrated, always simple, because you cannot test drive a big method. You need to be a really amazing developer to test drive. Test drive means writing tests first, just to make sure, right? Test-driven development doesn't mean test after. So you really need to be a phenomenal developer to be able to test drive a 1,000-line method, because it's almost impossible to do that. So then you can have this feedback loop. So, well, what if everything that we do, we know that it's working, it's simple, and we keep increasing our test suite? Everything, as soon as we are done, our test suite is already there. So that's value, that's feedback loop. Continuous integration. We have different people working in different teams, maybe, in my case, in different countries, and at the moment that someone merges a pull request, whatever, or merge into master, immediately we know if the entire thing works, or even before, like we prefer to do. As soon as someone says, look, I created this new feature, and I want it to merge, but before they merge, it runs the build on the branch. And if the branch is green, we merge it. So how long it would take us to get this information? What if we could get that in minutes? That is the value, that is the feedback loop. Refactoring, the same thing. So how can we avoid this complexity, throwing systems away? Well, what if we gradually keep it clean? We're always going to keep it clean. That is value. You are constantly simplifying our system. So, pair programming. Immediate feedback. As soon as I type the name of a variable, the person next to me is like, what the hell is that? Right? So if the person cannot understand, if the person is next to me, pairing me, doesn't understand, imagine another person that will see that 6 months later. So it's immediate feedback loop. Immediate on the quality of the systems. On top of that, we don't have the buzz factor. So the company is not dependent on a single person. So this is value. That is feedback loop. And this is how we should talk about practices. Any technical practice that you want to bring to your organization, because that's the question that I get the most. People come to me and say, hey Sandro, how do I convince my colleagues to adopt TDD? How do I convince my manager? I say, well, first of all, you need to talk, you cannot just go with an opinion. that the way that you code is better than the other one. You need to at least express the value of the things that you do. And there's nothing wrong with someone that doesn't want to do TDD. So in fact, I'm actually very curious. As soon as someone says, yeah, but I don't want to do test-driven development. So, well, that's awesome. So my follow-up question is, what do you do instead that has a shorter feedback loop and gives me more value? Because if someone can show that to me, I will kick all these practices away. Because what I care, I'm not attached to practices. I'm attached to the value that they bring. So, but of course that those practices to actually bring the value that we expect them, I think that it was even said in the previous talk, they don't come for free. As soon as you change the way you work and you add different things to the mix, there is a chance that your, how can I say, velocity, if you like the word, it will go down. Because you're still learning, you're still not proficient, that is normal. And you have this very famous curve, it's called J-curve. So that's where the process side of Agile is extremely important. Trying to bring just technical disciplines without a good process to support them is very difficult. So if you are able to keep this feedback loop short, then you are always free to try new practices and you can measure where you are. So if you keep going down, at some point you say like, do we think that we're going to go up at some point or are we going to be worse? Because if you're going to be worse, go back to what you were doing before, because there's no point in doing something different. But hopefully, as soon as you get better, you need to start moving up. And hopefully, you might be better. If not, go back, try something different, or go back to what you were doing before. It's like driving a car. How many of you drive? Probably most of you. Right, so I remember when I started driving, and remember that we didn't have automatic cars in Brazil. Well, we had, but it was expensive. So imagine like driving a manual car going up the hill. And there is a red light. And you need to stop. And you are scared to death that the car is going to roll down. I was terrified. Every time that I was driving my car, and if I had friends with me, they would say, can you open the window? I say, no! Can you switch the radio on? No! I was frozen. I was like, God, I couldn't, looking at all the mirrors all the time. Because for me, I was not driving, I was worried about the car. But once you learn how to drive, think about how you drive today, you don't even remember you are in a car. Right? The car becomes an extension of your body. You just say, oh yeah, I need to go back and pick up my kids. If I'm late, my wife will kill me, and all this kind of stuff. That's what you are thinking about. But you don't care about the car, and those practices are the same. At some point, you internalize them. But I could not come to an Agile conference without having a triangle in my presentation, right? There's always a triangle, right? So, pick two, right? So there's always, you need to pick two sides, you cannot have three. It's always the same, and you have variations of those triangles and stuff. I think that is all rubbish, right? So, where is the, there is a delay here. What happened? So, I think that there's a lot of managers, they like those stuff. Or you have these three things, you need to pick up one, you cannot pick the two. Here's maybe a bit controversial, but I think the cost you can easily measure, time you can easily measure, but my challenge is, what is quality? How do you define it? So, I gave up because I spent years of my life trying to figure out how to measure quality. You can measure many things. You can measure code coverage, you can measure cycle time, you can measure story points, you can measure whatever you want. But how do you define quality? In my view, you cannot measure what you cannot precisely define. If it's not precisely defined, it doesn't matter what you are measuring. So even if you have a bunch of metrics that are very precise, so if you pick one and say, this one, whatever that is, cycle time, code coverage, this is what quality means to us, fine. But you limited quality to one thing. First, quality is subjective. Each person, mainly if they play different roles in their team, each one has a different notion of quality. The best definition is extremely vague that I heard about quality, is quality is something of value to someone at some point in time. You cannot be more vague than that, right? That is how complicated defining quality is. So, and if you try to say, we are trying to set a few metrics that they together will represent quality for us. The problem with this approach is that the more metrics that you put together, the less value individual metrics have. Because if you put 10 metrics together and say, like, those are all my quality, if one goes down, one is a bit up, because they will not be all perfect in the same number that you want. They will be a bit down, a bit up, and blah, blah. So, what does it mean? What does it mean? So, I think that you can measure things, but what I'm going to say is a bit cheesy, right? I think that quality cannot be measured, but quality can be felt. So, some of you, if you already worked in more than one place, you know that feeling that you go to a place or to a team and it sucks, right? So you don't want to be there. Everyone is miserable, right? So, yeah, you need to go to psychology, all this kind of stuff, right? It's destroying your life. In other places, you just love it. Everyone is happy. So, are those places perfect? No, they have problems. Do they have a massive quality? No, they don't. But like, are they happy? Are they happy like working together with what they are producing according to their context? And if the answer is yes, for me, this is the best measure of quality. And how do you achieve that? Everyone is doing a good job, or trying to do their best, they share the same goals, and we have processes that allow those people to collaborate with each other, and they trust each other. And for me, there's no better metric than quality than this one. So, if you are measuring, those things, mainly code cover this random, we can, cohesion and coupling, L-Com4, right? So, never, ever show that to your manager. Ever. They don't understand that, but they certainly will use those metrics against you. Right? There's no doubt. So, use those metrics as an information for you to get better. That's how I use my metrics. How are you doing this? I thought that our design was better, but my L-Com4, that is level of cohesion of methods, is quite high. I was expecting to be 1 in the point 1 something. No, it's like 2, 3, 4, whatever. So I know that certain areas might have problem with cohesion. But that's how I prefer to use it. So another definition is software craftsmanship is a long journey to mastery. Is this insatiable desire to do things well for its own sake. So this is for me is key. Is the attitude we have. I try to be my best because I want to. Not because I'm told to. I think that this is a massive difference, right? This is the spirit that we like to share, right? There's nothing more pleasurable in life than to be paid to do what you love, right? And with that, you try always to do your best. Loving something will not make you good at it. Sometimes, even if you're not passionate about something, you can be good at it, but to be exceptional. It's very difficult to be exceptional, if you don't like that, because you will never have the pleasure to keep studying, keep learning. You need to have a pleasure for that, otherwise you're not going to go there. So, there is the attitude of what I call the software cross people. Passion, there is debatable. Some people hate that. There is loads of people on the internet. There's always someone wrong on the internet, right? So, including myself. But like, some people don't like the passion. I think that is important. It's important to like what you do, because it will increase the chance of you becoming good at it. And it will give you happiness as well. But one thing that for me is very important is called career ownership. A way to explain this is, I worked for a consultancy company. I joined the company at the same month that another person joined the company. Our first project was together. We worked side by side for 1 year. And then after that year, because of consultancy, we went to different projects. 3 years later, I was there for 5 years. This person stayed after I left, but like about 3 years later, we went to the same project again. It was very nice to see that person. And we were talking about the company. Oh, we'll be working together again. That's cool. And in one of these conversations, the person said, this company is shit, man. So, I was having a blast. I thought the company was awesome. And so now this company is shit. I said, well, how come? Never bought me a book. Never sent me to a training course. Never put me in any project that is interesting with modern technologies. I had exactly the opposite. The books I bought myself, but I was put in projects that had better technologies and more modern. Because the difference between me and him, I never let the company control my career. I never let the company control what I learn and when I learn. There is the job that I need to do, but what I learn and where I take my career is up to me. Right? And the more I learned, the more I could give back. The more I could give back, the more value I had. As we had new projects, the better the people had to be on those projects, because there are new projects with new clients, modern technology. You cannot go to a new project with modern technology if you don't know the new technology. Well, it will help a lot if you know. But he let the company control what he wants. And he was blaming the company for him not to have the knowledge. So, deliberate practice. So I think that, well, craftsmen should own their careers in the first place. That's one of your values. Regardless if you're a permanent, contractor, consultant, doesn't matter. So, deliberate practice. It's up to us to practice. Always, always learning and stuff. And the Boy Scout rule, always leave the campground cleaner than you found it. So, and this is a thing that you should apply to your life anyway. I'm going to rush a bit. I don't want to talk about this. But this is a bit important. If you wanted to be treated as a professional, you start behaving like one. Right? So, another example. Someone is hired today, have a financial agreement for the knowledge that the person has. So the person has some knowledge, the company says, okay, I'll pay you this amount of money for your knowledge, and then they go happy for 1 year. Guess to the end of the year, this person said, I want a raise. And the company said, well, you have the same knowledge that you had 1 year ago, but fair enough, you have knowledge of my company, you know my domain, and all this kind of good stuff, I'm going to give you a raise. The problem is not the first raise in the first year. The problem is the second year. Because the second year, your modern knowledge, your current knowledge is quite old. You have knowledge of the same company that you acquired in the year before. So why on earth are you worth more than the inflation? Why would you blame a company not to give you a pay rise if what you are offering is not more than you were offering 1 year ago? So, imagine if you go to a dentist and say, oh, my tooth is aching, and then the dentist says, can you send me to a training course? And then let's say that you are really completely fucked up in your head and so on. No, I'm going to send this dentist, I'll pay with my money to the dentist to go in a training course. Then the dentist goes to the training course, get knowledge with your money, comes back and charge you for the service. Isn't it what we do? Isn't it what we do? We ask our companies to pay for everything so that we go there at the end of the month and charge them. So think about what professionalism really means. There was a fire in the forest. So the whole forest was on fire. The lion, the king of the forest, was organizing all the animals. Oh, come on, let's go there, let's move away from the forest. And then there was this hummingbird flying to a nearby lake, putting some water in his beak and pouring 1-2 drops at a time. And a big fire. At some point the lion said to the hummingbird, hummingbird, what are you doing? You're never gonna put up this fire. And the hummingbird said, I know, but at least I'm doing my part. So this is what we need to think about. It's easy to blame everyone. It's easy to blame the whole world. The whole world sucks, but what are we doing to change? Or we just say, oh, if no one does that, why would I? So, we need to stop being dogmatic and fighting for Agile and Craftsmanship and TDD and stuff. We need to go beyond those things, right? So, Agile is not about Scrum. The same way that software craftsmanship is not about XP. And where is my slide? Right, there we go. So, software craftsmanship is not extreme programming. We need to detach an ideology from practices. So, in my view, XP has the best set of technical practices that I know. right? So it's what we advocate, it's what we preach or like help people to learn. They are the first techniques that we mentor our apprentices on and do in our communities. But in my mind, I want to do things better. I don't want to be doing the same thing or things in the same way in 20 years' time. I want to be open for new practices. So let's measure the value. Let's try new things. Always compare. But what is important is not the practice, is the value. So if you can get more value and evolve, we should. And that's why we should separate an ideology of doing things well from a set of practices, and hopefully both will evolve. I want XP to evolve, I want other practices to come up. And if they keep evolving, and hopefully we will help XP to evolve. As long as we can say, those are amazing technical practices that help us to do our job well. The best way that we can help our business is to continue delivering. So this is the best way that we can provide agility to a business. Of course, you can talk to them, you can help them and discuss, but like at the end of the day, if we are able to do that multiple times, that's great. But in order to deploy software to production multiple times a day during an extended period of time, we need a lot of engineering, a lot of collaboration between everyone involved, a lot of technical practices, automation at all levels. We need to be prepared for that. We need to know how to do those things. So, craftsmanship is definitely not enough to guarantee the success of a project. Nothing is. Not a single thing is. Software projects, the success, defining what does it mean to be successful in a software project is extremely complicated, probably even more complicated than defining quality, right? There are so many variables that we need to consider to know if the project is successful or not. And most of the time they are successful in certain areas and not successful in other areas. But I can say one thing, that software craftsmanship cannot guarantee the success of a project, but the lack of craftsmanship can definitely be the main cause of its failure. That I'm pretty sure. So some people ask me, but what does it really mean to be a craftsman? I'll try to answer this question because this is a very personal question to me. And again, where the hell is my slide? There we go. So, as always, I'll give a very long answer to a simple question. I started coding when I was 11 years old. At 17, I went to university to computer science. At 19, I had to find a job because I couldn't pay my university. And that was the best thing that happened in my life. But although there is a whole romantic side of this, but I was also arrogant, right? So because I knew about coding. I was doing coding before university. So of course, when I got to university, I knew how to do a few things that other people didn't. And then when I got my job, I became very cocky and arrogant because I was still at the university. And I thought that I was amazing, right? An idiot, as Uncle Bob put this morning. So then, by the end of my university, I was in a very complicated position because there was this company in São Paulo, that is a very large city in Brazil. I was living far away from it, but I needed to move forward. I need to move on, but I could not afford it. So I could not leave my job, but it was a multinational company that arrived in Brazil, and in order for you to take the test, you need to take a few days off. So the first phase was just a few tests, 2 or 3 days of tests and stuff. There was a national newspaper, those kind of stuff. So loads of people applied, like almost 1,000 people, I think, applied for 60 positions. So I passed the first phase. No, the first phase was on a Saturday, so I could do it. The second phase was like 3 days or something like that during the week. I had to tell my bosses that I needed to be somewhere. So they didn't believe me, so I went there and I passed. The problem was the third phase. The third phase you had to go, no, it was actually, no, lying. It was the second phase. The second phase you had to, they had a proprietary technology from Israel called Adabas, Natural in Adabas. It's a proprietary language in a database that comes with it. So we had to go on a training course of their proprietary technology and then take a test, and that would be a 2-week thing. And the process was already narrowed down to 150 people or something. I had to resign, to do things because I was working for a very small company, but if I resigned, I would not have money. So the people in that company said, you know what, you need to move forward. We cannot help you, but we can guarantee if you don't pass, you have a job. But we won't pay you for that amount of time. So I took the job, long, short, went through the 4 phases and passed it. If I was arrogant before, you had no clue how arrogant I was after, because I thought that it was amazing, right? So, wow. So then when I joined this company, they had business teams and they have the architecture team. And when these large companies, they have an intake of people, they just dash them out, they just distribute them randomly to different places, and they hope that you learn how to do something. But when I joined this company, I was in one of the business teams, and everyone was talking about this architecture team that was in the middle, creating all the components and stuff. And the thing that I heard the most is about this guy that was phenomenal. Apparently he was an amazing developer, great manager and stuff, and everyone talked about him and his team. And me, being arrogant as I was, I need to be in that team. What am I doing in the business team? So then at some point, I saw him in the water cooler, and I was you know, the kind of people that you admire so much that you are scared to speak to? So, but then I said, okay, and then I went there and introduced myself. So I was shaking, right? Sandro, and then said, okay, oh, hello. And then I said, I didn't know what to say, so I just said, I want to work for you. And then he was, where did that come from, right? So, and then he said, okay. And then we had about a half-an-hour conversation. And then he said, okay, I like you. I think that we are going to start preparing the papers and you can join my team. I said, like, really? Without test, without interview, anything? It took me a long time to understand what those 30 minutes meant. The conversation we had was all about him trying to measure my passion and what I do outside working that would help me to learn. That's what he did for half an hour, trying to figure out what do I do to learn and how passionate and how much I liked writing software. And then he said, yeah, I think you fit my team. After a month or so, paperwork done to transfer for another department or whatever, big company stuff, arrived on Monday. So about just before lunchtime, he sat down with me, so I was configuring my machine. So he explained me some bit of the systems. It was Delphi back then. And then he said, okay, so this is a very small feature. Maybe you could start with this one. So, okay. And then I said, well, when do I need to be done by? And they said, well, today is Monday. By Friday is fine, right? So it's just for you to get started. But that was my chance to prove that I deserved to be there. So I started hacking, right? So, and then I was blah, 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 left very late. Next day, very early morning, I was blah, blah. And I was trying to impress as well. Because back in the 90s, for you to be considered a senior developer, you should be able to write code that no one understands, right? So if you write things that no one understands, so wow, this guy is amazing, right? So, and I made sure to have loads of those things, right? Very cryptic stuff, shifting beats and all this kind of stuff. So by around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, I rushed into his office, very proud of myself, stuffed chest and say, boss, I'm done. It's working. He was sitting backwards to me, typing on a sort of a green screen. I had no idea what that was. Then later I learned that was VI. And then he looked at me and said, oh, okay, that's cool. So just one thing, like every time you say that you finish and it's working, the latter is redundant. So if you come to me and say that you finished, it needs to be working, because if it's not, you're not finished. I found it very odd and but awkward to listen. I said, wow, maybe he's not in a very good mood today, but there you go. So they said, okay, sit down and let's see. We use Visual Source Safe, right? So that's how old I am. So he got the code and opened Delphi files that has, Borland had an amazing IDE, way ahead of its time. Like Eclipse took like years to be better than the Delphi IDE. he opened my file, my .parse file, in VI. I said, who on earth would write Delphi on VI, right? And then I had written, I don't know, 200 lines of code. It was tons of code for such a small period of time. I said, okay, let's review your code. He went line by line, destroying everything. Can you see this? This is wrong. Can you see this? So this is a try-catch. Do you know how stack and heap work? And blah, blah. You see, this is duplication. Do you see, this is that, and this is that. This is name sucks. And it's like, what the hell is this? And say, what? No, this bit shifting, say, oh, I want to toggle the buttons on the screen. It's like, then he said, like, do you know how, what was the word that he used? It's not irresponsible, but he used a word that really offended me. So like, he said, like, can you imagine if we had a code base full of this kind of stuff? How on earth other people would maintain this? Disrespectful, that's the word that he used. So these kind of things in a code, they are disrespectful to the rest of the team. Because here you are trying to prove how clever you are, but this is, for me, is a very stupid thing to do. And I was just shrinking. Every comment he had, the guy that I was trying to impress, was destroying everything that I've done. And then, towards the end, after completely shattering everything that I've done, he said, did you understand everything I said? I said, yeah. And he said, like, if you had to do it again, would you know how to do it properly? Yeah. He deleted the code. From source control, deleted it, and said, like, go and do it again. And I was, you want to have a cold shower, so right, that's exactly what it is. And I said, yeah, but Michael, it was done. I said, no, it doesn't matter. You said that you could. I said, today's Tuesday. I gave until Friday, so go and do it again. I just turned my back and started moving. I didn't know what to say. And then when I got to the door, he called me and he said, Sandro. And I looked back, and then he said this: how it's done is as important as getting it done. I didn't understand the meaning of those words back then. At least not at that time. I was so pissed off that I couldn't understand. The only thing that crossed my mind were probably around 10 different times that I was planning to kill him. Right? That's like, who the hell does he think he is to speak to me like that? Me, the awesome developer. I went out furious. I used to smoke back then. I smoked one cigarette after another, and I was decided I'm gonna resign. Fuck this shit. Right? So I'm done. I'm not working for this person. And then after a full pack of cigarettes and calming down, it was the first time ever in my life as a developer that I realized that someone stopped to teach me how to do things well. I spent almost 2.5 years with that team. I learned how to work. First of all, I learned how to be humble. I learned that I had a lot to learn. I learned that it was more important for me to contribute with my team than try to be a smart ass. So it was important for me to focus on delivery. So that person changed my life. Not only my professional life, but my personal life. That person in that team gave me a purpose. It's like, what I do is more than just my job. Right? It's just not enough. I can be something. I can be someone. I can do things well. Not everyone had an opportunity to meet someone like I had. But for those of us that didn't have this opportunity, we have the opportunity to be this person to someone else. And this is how I summarize craftsmanship. For me, this is what the real spirit of craftsmanship is. We helping each other and moving our industry forward and be as best as we can be. Thank you.